episode 77. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined by Michael Swick.
How is it going, Dave? I believe I heard your phone. How's it going, Dave?
All right, it's on the countertop. That verdict just came through.
Oh, yeah. I'm avoiding my phone until we're done recording that.
You'll be all right.
Yeah. Busy week for me, Dave. I don't know about you. I've been running around doing a bunch of random stuff, for the podcast and for other projects. So not a lot of gaming for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, not a whole lot for me either. Just kind of it's kind of a down time for games in general. There's like not a lot of stuff coming out. There's not a lot of news coming out. Like MLB just came out, but that's neither here nor there. That's one of those games that's just kind of there, and so it's been kind of weird. It's snowing today, which is dumb.
Yeah, it was snowing. It was snowing over here. I was kind of excited, but then worried because I was going to order food, and I was like, oh no, that might interfere with my food ordering.
So we do have a little bit of a lighter show this week, which could mean some random tangent pop up somewhere, but hopefully not, because we could probably give you guys a little bit of a break compared to what we've been typically doing for time frame wise. The last two episodes have been a little longer. So we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that live streams every Tuesday around 5 o'clock Eastern time on twitch.tv/Digital Days Gaming. And then we release on Thursdays on the podcast services of choice. If you could leave us a review with some words, that would be super appreciative. And all the show notes links are in the show notes, so you can click on your podcast services, and there should be links in there if you want to join any of our communities or follow us on social media. And we're gonna just kind of move right back into the news.
Yeah, this one is breaking as of a couple hours ago. Jeff Kaplan has officially resigned from Blizzard. So those unfamiliar with Jeff Kaplan, he's the creative director and like this face of Overwatch. He's kind of been the go-to person at Blizzard, period, for like presentations and anything Overwatch League related. Anytime there's a patch, they put him out there to do the video. He's been definitely the face and voice of this franchise, which has got a sequel and being developed.
Supposedly.
That BlizzCon presentation was like, yeah, we got stuff. This is just another longtime Blizzard person leaving. He was with the company for 20 years. Aaron Keller is going to take over as his replacement in that lead role. But this is, as a former Overwatch fan, as someone who hasn't really touched Overwatch in like a year, this was kind of a big deal. I was shocked. I never expected him to leave, but the way Blizzard has been going, as it's been turning more into Activision, we've been seeing more and more key figures in Blizzard leave, and this is just the next one. And they're starting to run out of people that you identify as Blizzard employees, as they just get to the point where they won't kill the Blizzard name, but I can totally see them dropping the Blizzard from the Activision Blizzard marquee or whatever from their business cards, and just have Blizzard be a studio.
Kind of what everybody was afraid of when this was going through. I mean, Activision has had a decent run of games like Call of Duty's doing really well in terms of like the free to play ratio in the seasons, that people were a little worried about if they could or couldn't pull that off. But for the most part, I think that the huge concern for Blizzard was like how much is Activision gonna have an impact on Diablo and Overwatch and some of the other marquee stuff that they do. So I'm sure I'm missing something, so please don't freak out.
StarCraft.
Yeah. So there's that factor to it as well, but it's just hard to tell. Like, and management wise and corporation wise, like we just kind of beat the dead horse last week about what Sony is or isn't doing in terms of their money making scheme, and the reverse of what Microsoft is or isn't doing with the way they're generating revenue. And now it seems like Activision is corporatizing Blizzard to the point where people are like, you know what, I'm out.
Yeah, it's at the point where we see this with companies a lot, where like tenured employees are like a dirty, aspect of the business, where they don't want people that can say they've been there for over a decade, let alone 2 decades, because that just becomes more expensive. So I feel like Activision is definitely moving in that way, where they're almost making it uncomfortable for people that were at Blizzard who had a specific way the company was ran being taken away from them, and then they're seeing Blizzard just move away from what they're known for, which is taking their time and making these like competitive games, or like, you know, strategy games, top-down games. We've seen them try and crack into like the MOBA space. That didn't work. There's Blizzard stuff still sells, but Activision sees more money elsewhere. And if that means, you know, how they, you know, put Vicarious Visions into Blizzard, it just shows that they're just like, they're interested in the Blizzard name, but they're not necessarily interested in the way Blizzard runs things. And this is just another sign that Blizzard will be a shell of what it used to be. But
yeah,
we'll see.
I think a lot of these companies, like we talked about before, are chasing that FIFA money or that Fortnite money, or, you know, like what, and they're trying to find the next thing that's going to be top of the Twitch directory, top of the microtransaction world, and if they don't think that they have that next thing, they don't care. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, like, I guess we'll find out. But I would also think that you'd also see this influx, like we saw, like, I guess almost like 7 years ago, like this influx of indies doing different things that maybe they weren't allowed to be done before. And I don't, there's nothing that's like screaming out at me like this is a must play indie game in the last couple of years. Like Hades, maybe, in terms of like what was coming even into my realm, but it just feels like I even put a tweet out this week about like just the marketing standpoint of it is like a company like Activision will just market the hell out of the game to make you think like, maybe I need to check this out, you know, versus what an indie developer can't do.
Yeah, and well, to me, we're definitely seeing a better indie output, or at least in my opinion. We like different types of games, because these people are leaving these big companies, and all they can do is make indie titles, and this is how we get stuff like Hades and other games of that, you know, same ilk. It's not like any time, like when Sony closed Sony Japan, those devs they're not just going to quit the business. They're just going to make their own studio, and they're going to have to make smaller things before, you know, they can try to do bigger things.
The shitty part is that's like 2 years, 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's the scary part.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess what I was more basing it off of is like, and I know this is bad take on my part, because of, like you said, we have different things in different lanes that we stay in with gaming, but I'm not seeing anything like, and I guess it really wouldn't even be an indie, but carrying the power like Flower did and Journey did. And in terms, I mean, Hades was close, but Hades was probably the first one in 3 or 4 years that was up there.
No, I feel like they're coming pretty frequent. I just don't know if they're hitting your spectrum. I mean, like Celeste was pretty big before that. I mean,
it was, but I just feel like it was only a couple months. Like it had a 2-month run where everybody was talking about it, and then they kind of stopped. And I guess, I mean, and the hindsight's 2020, or looking through rose-colored glasses. I know that, but you know, like there's like people could still talk about Journey now, you know, and you could pick it up and play it. And sure, that's like a top tier. Like and maybe it's because they're not being pushed into Plus as much as they used to be. You know,
yeah, I think that's
it too, from my standpoint. Maybe it's all going to be on Game Pass now.
Well, I think the issue that you might be having where you're not seeing these as much is the big publishers were pushing those games at one point. Mm-hmm. Sony at their E3 had 8 indie people on stage back to back, and they were all playing the game. Nintendo had a press conference, and they would do the montage. Microsoft would have a press conference, they would do the montage, and there would be multiple spots where the spotlight was on the big publishers or the big console manufacturers, and then they would showcase indie games. You don't have that really right now. So
full
you have
disclosure,
to.
I didn't watch ID at Xbox beginning to end either.
Yeah,
and I didn't watch the Nintendo thing we're going to talk about later, beginning to end, or at all.
There was no anchor for you to tune in, and you're in that space where your time's limited. You can't hunt stuff down despite the last name. You can't like go for, you know, like I can sit down and watch the Nintendo indie thing because I'm like, I guarantee there's going to be something here I like because I have a more eclectic thing. You have a more stuff on your plate. So like, unless before Indie World comes out, you're like, hey, this is the announcement that we're going to showcase. Like kind of how PlayStation Direct or the State of Plays work, where they basically tell you like, hey, here's the marquee thing, and here's eight other things we're going to talk about, or we'll talk about 8 other things. That'll get you to tune in. Indie World be like, hey, here's a half-hour indie stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to sit down and be like, I'm dedicating the 45 minutes.
And I think it also
this.
it just has to do, for me, it has to do a little bit with name recognition, and I think developers or publishers don't do a good enough job of like I off the bat when you first started talking about it until you explained it to me, I didn't know that the same people that had done Bastion did Hades. I did, but like I know that Drinkbox is doing that. Nobody Saves the World, and I'm like I had a great time with both Guacameles, so I'm willing to, Game Pass or not, I'm willing to check that game out because of the pedigree of the studio from it. Versus that 100% means that there could be something like super cool that I never get a chance to play that could be one of the best games I've ever played because I never heard of it.
Yeah, for sure. Guacamelee did something for you, and it was probably showcased at an event that you were paying attention to, and it just led to piquing your interest to where you're with them. Supergiant Games, Hades is the first game that I ever got into from them. Like I was never a big Transistor fan or Pyre fan or Bastion fan, but Hades did something for me. But I knew about their pedigree beforehand. But for the most part, Supergiant Games have had to just do it themselves in terms of like, I don't feel like they were showcased at any big events. I mean, they were at the Game Awards and they were in early access on the Epic Game Store, which helped a little bit, but it's a lot harder to find indie games. Like Greedfall is ex-Blizzard developers, or Godfall was ex-Blizzard developers, and that was a mess to know, what the hell Godfall was. It didn't turn out to be a good game. But we're seeing people leave and do other things, and it's just a matter of like somehow getting that name recognition and getting the marketing just right. That's kind of important for a lot of these indie devs, which is something I'm hoping that they figure out this summer, because we saw last year was prime example of the various smaller publishers could have taken super advantage of last summer, no E3, and they tried to, and it just wasn't very successful, or at least in my opinion, with how the Guerrilla Collective worked and the indie game showcases worked. I don't think any of that was truly captivating, how any of that was formatted. And I'm hoping with E3 being a digital event, maybe we can recreate some of that.
I think we need to see the resurgence of demos again. Like you can kind of look back at whether you like it or didn't like it, what Outriders did with their demo and with Game Pass, and to see their game sell so well. Like and like the headlines I've been reading was Outriders proves that average game is still sellable.
Yeah, it's Outriders fills that thing that I harp on all the time of AA games or whatever you want to call them, B tier games, and that was supported through the fact that they released a demo that's available and has progression that you can keep from the demo over into the main game. And then also the Game Pass thing boosted it like ridiculous because it got people that weren't going to play it to talk about it. And then that led to people buying it on other platforms that if they didn't have an Xbox. So there's a ton of things that could be done.
Or just buying it on Xbox. It was like one of the best selling games on Xbox for the month of the end of March, or the physical ending of March.
Which I think people don't really focus too much on is that discount you get with Game Pass if you want to buy the game. I don't think people focus on. There's enough crazy people like me that if I like the game, I will buy the game even though I have access to it on a service. And I think that's what helps a game like Outriders sell on Xbox is that discount.
We're gonna get. I mean, at this point in time, we're gonna get either an expansion or a sequel to Outriders, just based on the initial success. And when that will be, I don't know. But
depends on Square Enix on if they consider it a success. Hopefully, when they negotiated that deal.
In terms of how much money they got from Microsoft for Game Pass, and then how many units they've sold to where it charted on MPD with only 3-day window for where it charted in the top 5 on the the sales charts for the month of March. Yes, I know it came out in April, but the month physically hadn't ended yet. So it came out in physical month of March. So
I can still see Square being like, yeah, I mean, we were expecting more money than the money we agreed to from Microsoft, and it just wasn't. You know, they can think of something. I mean,
at this point in time, with it being April being such a dry month, in gaming, I expect Outriders to be in the top 10 again.
I think I would probably say that's safe to assume.
Not the top, like right in the middle of like you'll have stuff in there. You may or may not have Returnal in there. You may or may not have MLB The Show. I think you will have MLB The Show in there.
MLB The Show will totally be in there.
And then you'll have your Call of Duty, your Minecraft, like sprinkle in there. Some company will put something on sale, and it'll like as an example, if Nintendo for some reason decides to make Breath of the Wild like $40, which they never will, it'll just show up in there again.
Mm-hmm. No, they just put out a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, and then people will buy Breath of the Wild at full price. Yeah, no, it'll definitely... Outriders will probably be in the NPDs. Not maybe on the top, but like you're right, in like that middle range, just because
that 4 to 9 range, I feel like, for at least this month, if not maybe another month. I mean, it all depends.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the thing that I was celebrating, but I wasn't like over... I wasn't complimenting them too hard.
Mad at me.
PlayStation is not going to close the Vita and PS3 store after all. Jim Ryan took to the PlayStation blog to say that they're not going to close those stores. They will still close the PSP store. Not too surprising. I would assume the Vita did have backwards compatibility with the PSP digitally, so like there probably wasn't a ton of people playing a PSP. I still have mine. My battery exploded. I bought a new battery.
You can play anything from the PSP library on the Vita, correct?
Yeah. Obviously not UMDs, but who the hell still has UMDs? Yeah. The post, I love that Jim Ryan is the one, Mr. Anti-Backwards Compatibility was the one that did this post. I almost feel like he just did it just because he just was like, I need to be the one who gets, people keep fucking showing that Sean Layden video.
Somebody wrote this for him and he put his name on it.
I know, yeah, so. But I guarantee it was his decision to like put my name on that. I want to be the one that makes the announcement.
This still would have been better for him to read this, even if you read this exact thing they put on the blog on a video and posted it.
Yeah, especially with Sean Layden liking every tweet that says Sean Layden should be back. I don't know if you saw that. No. Sean Layden's Twitter account, if you go to his likes, he's liking every tweet that's been like, we want Sean Layden back.
Which again leads me to believe, like what I've said for a long time, is that his departure from Sony was not peaceful.
Yeah, it had to be a power struggle. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Companies do that all the time, but
yeah,
it definitely was.
I want to make sure that I'm not spreading rumors, though.
Yeah. Here's the initial thing that Jim Ryan put. When we initially came to the decision to end purchasing support for PS3 and PS Vita, it was born out of a number of factors, including commerce support challenges for older devices and the ability for us to focus more of our resources on newer devices, where a majority of our gamers are playing. We see now that many of you are incredibly passionate about being able to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and PS Vita for the foreseeable future. So I'm glad we were able to find a solution to continue operations. Basically, enough people said, what the fuck are you doing? That they're like, okay, we'll just keep it up. Doesn't say this is going to be the indefinite thing that like this is going to stay up forever. But at least for the time being, you'll be able to access and purchase stuff on the PS3 and Vita, which I think is good. The only thing that I get a little snarky with is same thing when Xbox created the problem where they're like, we're ridiculously raising the prices of live, and then went back on it. We're like, actually no, and people celebrated that.
Right.
I don't like when companies create the problem, solve it, and then pat themselves on the back. But at least they just did this.
That was within a 24-hour turnaround, not a 3-week turnaround.
Exactly. So this was.
So I think that okay. First off, good. Like you guys, if anybody that's playing PS3 and playing Vita games, you still can do so. But again, going through Twitter this week, they did not communicate this to the devs. So the devs are finding out about this as soon as the regular consumer is finding out about it. That's a little weird.
I understand that tweeting with people.
I understand that the whole thing behind it of if they tell a dev like 24 hours in advance, they could hit, and they want to control the messaging. I get that. So I don't have the exact dates in front of me. I meant to do this before we recorded, but I just didn't because I'm lazy. We started talking about this, I want to say 3 weeks ago, at least, if not 4, where we talked about the rumors, and then the official announcement came out, and then we talked about it with Josh. And now we're here 2 weeks after talking about it with Josh. So I feel that there's 2 possible scenarios here. Like, Jim Ryan saw how much money was being spent because people were worried about their stuff going away, and goes, oh, maybe there's an actual market for this still because of the influx of it, of saying, hey, we've got a drop dead date on this. Or I think it just looks bad that they possibly, I'm going to say this wrong, but possibly use this as a way to generate more sales revenue, waiting a little bit longer to do that. And this also means that there is no plan for any form of what we were hoping for, of like a package, a subscription service, making PS Now better, like putting all your stuff on PS Now, putting all the PS3 and PSV stuff, PS Vita, PSP stuff on PS Now. Like we had hoped that there was some like plan with that logo of like the extra space, like, oh, why is there a PS3 download list on PS5? Like, that's just, there's no plan. Because if there was a plan, they wouldn't do this.
But also at the same time, you could say, because they're keeping the store up, they want to make sure people can still purchase the stuff. So if they do have a plan, they could pull on it. But yeah, I agree. They
wouldn't have pulled the plug in the first place.
Yeah, they wouldn't have thought about that. They're not. The crazy thing is,
they would have came out and said, hey, we're pulling the plug, but we've got something. We're working on something, but we need to pull this plug to start testing what we want to do. Like they would have been.
The tech is so old and shit, which is the thing that we've heard for years of just how the PS3 store was made. Well,
it's part of like why it took so long to be able to change your PSN name, stupid crap like that. So
it's one of those things where I think it just came down to they looked at like the number of dollars coming in versus the amount of dollars it costs to run it, and then they just decided, screw it, it's not worth keeping this up, and then they would save money. Especially for right now, like Sony is probably looking for anywhere they can cut costs. Just because right now, we're in a pandemic. So I'm sure even if it was a very low amount of money they were losing keeping the store up, which I still doubt they were losing money, period, keeping those stores up, but it could be. They're trying to just cut whatever corners they can, especially when they're in the process of like giving, was it 250 million more to Epic to get a share of that pie. They're just looking to whatever corners they can cut, but they probably saw the influx. And this is an easy win they can give themselves. This is a pro-consumer move that they can make, even though it's coming from an anti-consumer move that they were going to do originally. I'm happy that this is happening, but it's
right.
It just shows that there's not a steady plan in place. If they're going to do this and then they pull back from it, and people still have hopes that there might be backwards compatibility coming in the future, even though they're forgetting the fact that technically there's a PS1, PS2, and PSP emulator running on the PS4, because those games that they re-released on those are running off an emulator. So they have software emulation technology that they can run on a PS4, and a PS5 is backwards compatible.
I don't think that they feel the return on investment is worth the investment.
Yeah, I think they don't want to go through like the testing phase of like, that's why the Series X backwards compatibility isn't the full library, is because someone has to go in there and test it, or you have to like work to have someone have the internet be the ones who like curate and then find out which games don't work. That maybe if Sean Layden was still there, he would feel like there's like some sort of return, a hearts and minds thing. Just if you look at how I
think that, I mean, I know what you're saying, and I think like Phil Spencer talks about, like, I don't even think he's ever talked about it, but I could, well, I can't because I have an S, but you could, or if I had an X, if I go to like a flea market, or I'm like helping my buddy clean out his garage and I find an Xbox 360 game, there's about a 50% chance that I can put that in my Series X and it works.
Yeah.
And and it might get a little bit of upscaling, it might get a little bit of detail checking, detail done for, but and I think that Xbox's company, led by Phil Spencer, felt they want the consumer to put the Series X on their in their entertainment center and know that that's all that they need.
Yes, and when they started to work on all that backwards compatibility stuff, they were behind, and they needed any win they can got. And they probably found out that Sony did not give a shit about backwards compatibility, and they were like, okay, we can offer something the other guys can't.
And that's a big deal to some. It's not a big deal to a lot. And to be, fully honest with you, like if I came across something like helping my neighbor clean out his garage and it was a 360 game and I had a Series X, I probably would put it in and think it's really cool that it worked and play it for 10 minutes and be like, damn, this game is old. I don't want to play this anymore.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's a nice box to check, and it's an easy way, if the other side is so against the idea, to make yourself look better, especially when you don't have any first-party games like available. And that's why the backwards compatibility list hasn't really grown on Xbox. They've tweaked stuff, but they haven't really added games to it, because I think they're done adding games to the list, because they have a avalanche of first-party games that they're hoping to release within the next couple years that they want their resources focused on.
Yep.
It's if Sony...
But if you laughed and pointed the finger at Xbox for making a decision on Xbox Live and then reverting that decision within 24 hours, you need to laugh and point the finger at Sony for doing the same thing.
Yeah, and that was my whole thing. Is this like, and it took them a month. And there's no word on if they're going to bring the web store back, because the web store was killed before the store closure announcement was confirmed.
I was hearing horror stories about your Vita having two-factor authentication, which is triggered by the web store, which doesn't, since the web store doesn't work, you couldn't like refactor your Vita.
There's a shit ton of DRM stuff that I would hope Sony would fix if they cared. And
I've also heard the term watch battery in the last 2 weeks for all consoles and DRM more than I ever want to hear about it again.
It's real bad. There's some really fucked up shit on PlayStation.
It's bad on all platforms. It's bad on PlayStation. Xbox's battery is apparently even worse. So like everybody that's like, oh, like you're always real bad. Like, oh, it's just like, I didn't even know that these damn consoles had watch batteries in them and that they could die. And I'm good. Like,
and the fact that they're there to keep the time. And if the time runs out, like everything goes wrong, it's stupid.
They all look bad. Like, and
yes.
I even started, because I got into an argument with somebody on Facebook, not in our Facebook group, but I even started looking into Steam, and Steam's done it too. Everybody's like, "Oh, I own my games on PC," because like whether you're for a Game Pass subscription or you're for digital or for physical, if you buy all your stuff on Steam, it's all digital anyways. And there's at least 6 or 8 games that have been revoked off of players' owned Steam libraries, that they're just gone.
Yeah, like you can have the offline files and run from that, but if you connect to Steam again, Steam will immediately be like, "Yoink, let's just take that." Yeah.
There is no perfect system. There is no brush that paints over everything and covers all bases. And you can sit there and say like, "Oh, I got my disc; it'll always work," until your console doesn't work and it costs $1,400 to buy another console.
Yes. All right. Next story. Just a quick one. This is the thing that we've been talking about. This is something we've been talking about that could lead to other things. Xbox Cloud is coming to web browsers, both on PC and Apple devices, so iPads and iPhones. This will run off Safari or Chrome or Edge. Invites are going out this week for that, for Ultimate members. So if you have an iPhone, and I guess they know you have an iPhone, you'll get an invite potentially, and they're going to expand this, but this is just the xCloud Game Pass coming to Apple products, which is a huge market. This is Microsoft's workaround for the rules that Apple has in place in terms of registering games to the Apple Store before you can put them.
This is Stadia.
Yeah, this is Stadia. I'm more curious about this. Like, I don't see myself playing through a browser, but I'm more curious about just...
If you're a Game Pass Ultimate member, why are you playing through a browser anyways? Just play on your your PC.
Basically.
I guess if you have like a really bad, or you travel like on your laptop, but even then, if you're traveling, like the internet's probably not good enough to really do this. And that'll be the huge caveat. Like if this works, like
yeah, I'm just more curious about just the implementation on how it works, and the ease of use, the library that's going to be on there. The constant battle these companies are having with Apple.
This is how Microsoft's going to show Apple, like, hey, this is, like, look whether we want it or not, like, this is what Microsoft's going to show Apple in terms of being able to get an app on there, which they'll probably still have to give a percentage of the app download sales to.
And
to
at
Apple,
this
of
point,
course, but.
And at this point, they will just tell them fuck you, we don't need you. We run off Safari. So the
Right.
implementation there will be interesting. I'm excited about this just because I feel like this is the thing they had to take care of before they do a TV app or something. Like, this is the pillar that if they can get this to run on fucking Safari, that they can then develop an app on a TV and
I
get
think
that
that
going.
they can.
No, they
Actually,
can, but
yeah, it runs pretty well on 5G. So,
but I feel like this is the thing they had to do first. Like, if they couldn't get it playable on a browser on a computer, they weren't going to spend the resources on an app on
right.
Roku and Samsung and all that shit. So this is, I guess, just one domino falling that's going to lead to them pushing this everywhere. No idea how long this is going to be in beta. There are going to be 50 games that they've put touch controls into, so they've actually done the work to add touch controls to games.
They're doing that constantly.
And the list is up to 50 already, which I didn't know until I read this article.
Yeah.
So if you're an Apple user, I'm an Android user, so I've been using Cloud here and there. It works well enough, but I have a native app. I don't use it in the browser.
Right,
So,
and that's still technically in beta.
yeah, that's still in beta. We'll just see what happens with it in browser, but maybe it'll
It's
be a
not
good
great
experience.
I don't have a great experience when I played, like, if I played Destiny on it, I don't have a great experience, but I think like the little bit that I dabble with, like Octopath Traveler, like you can play like a turn-based game on the phone.
Oh,
for
for sure.
like
That's
that.
mostly what I played, like puzzle games and turn-based games. It works fine for that. We'll just keep an eye on that and see how far they can get with that tech, and Apple will see if Apple comes begging to them of just like, all right, fine, fuck it, put it on our store.
Right.
People are using Safari too much for your service.
But I mean, if it works well, like I talked about a couple weeks ago, like these iPads are like crazy good in terms of screen resolution, refresh rates, and we all know that there's a ton of iPads out there. And if all of a sudden, if they can get into a decent relationship with Apple to where if you buy an iPad, as an example, you have a 3-month subscription or a 6-month subscription to Game Pass, like in your box. Like, if they can get to that level, it would be crazy just to start telling people, like, hey, just, you already have a controller or like a regular Bluetooth controller, and just you can play Gears or you can play the next Halo on your iPad.
Yeah, I think the go for Apple or Microsoft would be just to get it a trial bundled in with Apple TV.
Yeah.
Just your Apple TV subscription. This is kind of like what I think for a while Game Pass was like, hey, if you have Game Pass, you get 3 months of Disney Plus for free. If they can work out a deal like that,
It's the whole reason I've been watching Apple TV, and if they keep producing enough shows that I want to watch, I got a year subscription because my daughter bought her iPad, and she's like, I'm not going to use this here, and like I've been able to watch some good stuff on there. And if it comes down to if there's a show on there that I want to watch, then I'll pay for it after my subscription's over.
Yeah. All right, last story. Again, news is pretty light. Nintendo did a Indie World. Some of the highlights I wrote down. Surprisingly, Fez is coming out for the Switch.
I thought for some reason it was already there.
Me too. This was weird because I think it was just like in a montage too. It wasn't even like, oh, and Fez is coming. Because sometimes Nintendo will do that. We're like, hey, here's this old game and we're going to spend 2 minutes talking to you about this old game. But it was just in like a sizzle reel, and I believe it's out already. Like it was out same day.
Yeah, it was like available now or whatever.
Yeah, which they're really good at doing.
They made a big deal about this game releasing multiple times, every time on a different platform. It's coming to PlayStation because it was an Xbox exclusive for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was an Xbox Arcade game for a while back when the summer of arcade games was like the big thing. Which I don't know if there's anything that matches like that summer of arcade stuff from the 360 era in terms of.
I think going back to early on in the PS4 days, like what we were just talking about at the beginning of the show, of like, I don't remember what it was called, but wasn't it like indie highlights, like over the summer,
Something
like
July?
That, yeah. Like it was some
6
sale
weeks.
they had, like a 2-month sale that it was like highlighting, indie games, and some of them would come to Plus, and then some of them would be like on sale. Like I think I just recall like Hotline Miami, being like a featured game, and when it came out, and then that.
One marquee new release indie game, and then a bunch of sales that would switch out every week when they would switch the marquee new game. Yeah, those were good. And Fez is definitely from that era on the 360, I believe. TMNT is coming to Switch. I believe the trailer.
That game looks amazing. The colors and everything looks so cool.
Music is pretty good too.
Yeah.
I just put it in there just because I know this is like a game Dave's excited for. It looks really good.
I hope it has really. I just hope the online works. Like anytime that if it even is online play, which I hope it does. Like please have it. But it's just that's always the concern with an indie developer is like, can they afford the cost for servers? You know.
Well, it's .emu.
Okay.
Who did not Disc Jam? What's the Windjammers?
Okay.
So they have good netcode. So if they're gonna do online play, they could handle it. I just don't know if there is online play for it, to be completely honest.
The trailers look amazing, what they're showing, but they've also been very vague on, like, obviously on price and date and features. So, but it's, to be fair, it's only been announced like 2 months now.
Yeah, I think this is like the second or third.
Yeah, it's supposed to come this year, though. I think they're still saying 2021.
Yeah. It looks good. I'm not even a big Turtles fan, but this looks really good, especially after we've been like let down with the last couple Turtle games. Was it that Platinum one that was real bad last time? So it's good to see. Other things on this list: Ollie Ollie World. It's gonna go open world. This is from Roll 7, I believe, is the developer.
Yeah.
It's like
always been like an on-rail skateboarding trick game, and okay, this is another one of like them trying to expand their ability to make this game new and interesting, and that going open world, like at its core of what Ollie Ollie is, concerns me.
It does, but it also seems perfect for where the franchise is going, because I don't know if they could just do Ollie Ollie 3 and find like the level of success that they had with the first two. And one thing I love about Nintendo, what they do with their indie thing, all their games just seem perfect. Like whoever's curating what games they put in these indie worlds, every time I see one, I'm like, perfect for handheld. And that all the indie games always seem like they're made for the platform, when that's not necessarily the case every time.
That's where Ollie Ollie shined for me, was on Vita.
Yeah, that was like a great Vita game back in Vita's heyday. But every time there's an indie world, everything seems perfectly made for the Switch. Though when they come out, sometimes that is not, because the Switch is like kind of underpowered at this point. But it's still nice to see.
Right.
House of the Dead remake, I just put there just because who doesn't love House of the Dead? That's like back when movie theaters had arcades. That would be the thing that you would play. Or if you go to, like, I don't know, do Dave and Buster's still exist or some shit? You know.
I think so.
Yeah. House of the Dead remake coming. It looks okay. I'm fine with that. But the thing I'm most excited about was Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. So I love the original Oxenfree.
A lot of people I follow on Twitter were talking about this. So.
Yeah, this is Night School Studios. They're the ones who made After Party, that game where you're two people that are trying to outdrink the devil in hell. Oxenfree was a really good indie game from a couple years ago, and I wasn't expecting a sequel to it, so I was really excited. It's a very short teaser. You have no idea what's going on, but I was definitely freaking out when I was at work and then like messaged a couple friends like, holy shit, Oxenfree 2 is coming out, and they were like...
And apparently this just came off Game Pass too, which is super weird. But it's just a random coincidence. The first one,
yeah. But it's coming this year, which I wasn't really expecting. Though, if it ends up in our what's delayed section later this year, I wouldn't be surprised. That is pretty much all the highlights for me. Dave, did you see anything in particular from that thing? I know you didn't watch it in full, but I know some stuff trickles down to you.
There wasn't. I mean, for the most part, like I try to follow a diverse amount of people on social media to sometimes like, hey, if like 4 or 5 or 6 of them are talking about something, like maybe it's something I need to pay attention to, and the only one that really like floated to the top on that was Oxenfree.
Yeah.
So.
I highly recommend playing that one if you get a chance. So now it's off Game Pass, so you probably
doesn't mean that if it's good enough, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a good puzzle game. Little like sci-fi, little scary. Never goes too deep in either direction, but it like finds a nice balance. But that is it for news. Just happy to see that. Waiting for... We know Microsoft and Nintendo are going to have stuff for E3. Still waiting to find out what Sony's going to do, if they're going to announce something beforehand or if they're just going to be like on a Monday saying later this week we'll have a state of play. Because I feel like Sony's due for one.
Before that, I still think they need to have another one with something about like.
They need one for Ratchet.
Yeah, no, agreed. But they also need one. They need one for Returnal, more than 3 minutes. But that's neither here nor there. Apparently, I complained enough that they just popped a trailer out the next day.
But then when you go to the YouTube channel, they also dumped like 20 trailers on top of it. So you're just like, oh, okay, it had its moment.
Yeah,
that's it for news.
So, all right. What's delayed? Kind of. I feel like Michael's reaching here a little.
This counts. Okay, Assassin's Creed Valhalla Wrath of the Druids DLC was delayed a couple weeks. I believe 2 weeks. So that counts. That is game-related things that were delayed. It's not that bad of a delay. I don't know if they give a reason for it other than the usual, like we want to fine-tune, make sure everything's right sort of delay. But yeah, Valhalla DLC was delayed. It was just so funny. Like IGN does have a running article of like things delayed in 2021, so I'm not the only one who's like keeping track of this. Of just like I know there's going to be more delays. I'm just at a certain point we're just going to run out of things that can be delayed because we're running out of things that had dates. I know Dave is still betting on
even
Ratchet.
games. Yeah, even games that
don't get a date,
don't have dates get delayed. And full disclosure, like again, I hope I'm wrong, but like in my mind, we talked about a little bit before we recorded. Ratchet's got about 10 days before I'm like, okay, well maybe it's actually gonna hit it.
Yeah, the next announcement from Ratchet is gonna be we either went gold or we got delayed.
Yeah, like I hope it comes out because that's definitely a game that I would love to play, and I think it comes out like on a tentative week I'm on vacation, so that'd be great.
That'd be very good for you.
Yeah, I used to. I loved playing the Ratchet games that I played. I don't have they never had any like amazing like story moments or anything in them, but they were always fun. So and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to playing a game on PS5 that only can work on PS5 that I care about.
Yep. And you don't even sound that excited, but yeah, no, I'm just happy. Like I'm gonna pick up Returnal day one, and then I'll pick up Ratchet day one, just because. It's been a while since I've actually bought a game. Last game I bought was Yakuza Like a Dragon. Everything else, I mean, that's the last like big game that I bought. I bought a bunch of indies in between, but big $70 games. Yakuza Like a Dragon was the last full price game I picked up.
All right. So what we're planning on watching, mine's gonna be pretty short. I don't remember if I talked about it or not, but watching wise, Angela and I went through all of Ted Lasso.
You mentioned briefly, but I think it was you just started Ted Lasso.
Yeah, that's really good. Even if you don't like soccer, like that's really, really good. And the fascinating part is if you're paying any attention to soccer right now, there's a really cool, interesting thing that started up and then now is kind of dying with. I was super interested to see if it actually happened where like these mega teams in Europe wanted to like split off and make their own league because they're getting tired of like FIFA. And FIFA's like, well, if you do that, you can't play in the World Cup. And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah, like that's how we make money.
Yeah, so like that's like even, but with Ted Lasso, it's just a great show. Like again, I know it's people are like maybe get a little turned off of it because it's soccer and then it's European soccer, but soccer maybe plays like or football, whatever. Sorry, guys, whatever you want to call it. It's probably only I would say like 10 or 15% of the show. The other 80-85% is just genuinely good writing and funny moments. So. And then somebody brought it up to me too as well. Like a year ago, we watched Mythic Quest, and apparently, like we must have watched it just before they released a Mythic Quest quarantine episode. Mm-hmm. And Ansel and I watched that last night. It was like a 30-minute thing that was hilarious. I wish I would have seen that like last year in the middle of the quarantine, but that was hilarious. If you're not a Mythic Quest fan, you could probably still check it out and think it's funny. But there's there's another episode that we'll probably watch. And the basic stuff, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's getting really good, and I'm like, wait, there's one more. Like, yeah. So, and Mighty Ducks is kind of like, I guess that they're taking a break. Yes. Like there's like 6 episodes, and then they're gonna take like a break, and whoever knows how long it is or isn't. and I feel like this last week's episode was like a throwaway episode. Like, this sucks. Like the mom's like hockey tournament or whatever. Like I felt like it was just. I
fell off honestly after like the second episode. I just fell off.
I don't blame you,
yeah.
and I'm kind of just like tease/spoiler. We talked about it in our Patreon episode. Like, there's supposed to be ducks, original ducks that are making cameos. That hasn't happened yet.
That means they're gonna pop in that last episode, and then it's gonna be throwaway.
It's like, yeah. But then the other one, and again, whatever, call me a Disney sucker. It's there. I'm on the app. I'm watching it. Big Shot with John Stamos. That was that's a basketball coach.
Yeah.
It was okay. Like, enough for me to want to watch the second one. But he's like this big wig NCAA coach that Bobby Knighted a referee with a chair, and he got fired or whatever. And then his agent, the only thing his agent's ever able to do is to get him a head coaching job at a high school girls prep team.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he's dealing with the typical like athletic parents. But it's John Stamos. If you're a Full House fan or a John Stamos fan, he's a pretty good actor. So, and then Angela and I played a little bit more for the playing part. We played a little bit more It Takes Two.
Is it deceptively long? Because it seems like that'd be a perfect like 4 or 5 hour game, but it sounds like it's like a 12-hour game.
No, for you, like if you and Sarah sat down and played it, you'd have it done in a Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
But there are certain aspects of there are things in it in general that are just challenging and takes a minute or two to get the coordination down. There's a level that one person is responsible for like the hang glider of like moving it up and down, and while the other person is shooting, and you're relying on the person that's shooting to burn a couple areas away, and then the person that's moving the glider up and down has to get through some things. So I love my wife, but she's just not as coordinated at video games as normal people are, and it something that would take you and Sarah probably 2 or 3 turns is probably taking us like 7 or 8 turns.
From what I've heard from other people playing it, it sounds like there's a couple sections in a lot of his games that are like that, where they're like way more challenging than they should be for like fun co-op games.
Yeah,
especially if you're playing online.
The biggest thing too is it's not there's some co-op games that like one person can carry, and that's not possible in this game.
No, it sounds like it's legitimately cooperative, like with whatever everything you're doing.
But yeah, it definitely has some challenges and different things that require like the first player to do something so the second player can do something, and if the first player doesn't do it, the second player can't, and vice versa. So it's fun. I'm having a good time with it. I would like to, and this is no discredit to my wife at all. Like the first part of it is I'm enjoying playing the game with my wife. We're laughing. She's getting annoyed. She's probably flicked me off more times playing this video game than she has in my entire marriage. But it would be fun to play with somebody that is more video game dynamic. That's all. Yeah. And again, I'm not a great player. Like I struggle too. But just to see, how things would work, or for me to play through as the other character. So
yeah.
But well worth the $40 price tag. Like, and I still never took care. Her and I started to play A Way Out, and I think that was just a little bit too realistic for her. And It Takes Two is definitely not as realistic.
It also sounds like, from what I remember, A Way Out story-wise wasn't like all there. As opposed to A Way Out seems to be like catching people more. Like there's more character work in there that people are being drawn to, from what I understand. I feel like the reception to It Takes Two is way better than it was for A Way Out. And it seems mostly the complaints I heard were story related for A Way Out. And I'm not really hearing anyone complain about the story, other than parents messing up and playing that game with their kid, not realizing the game is a little darker than like the trailer shown.
Yeah. It's definitely like a pretty interesting story that's going on in there. But I think we're pretty close to the end from talking to a couple of my friends. So.
Yeah.
But then just let alone Angela and I matching up our schedule to where we both A, have the energy, or B, are home at the same time to focus on playing a video game like that is, and we try to stream it, like, so.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
My list is pretty light as well.
I'm sorry. I'm into season 2 of Smallville, and it's getting kind of laughable. Like, I'm watching it just because I kind of want to see what happens, but like my wife will periodically pop in and out like when I'm watching it, and it's always like super convenient whenever like Clark needs to do something that like the friend he's saving gets knocked out.
Oh yeah, no, that's a trope of that show where it
Yeah.
That show is not to be taken too serious.
And I'm good. I like the stories that's going on, and I do want to learn more, about Superman's like story arc and storyline. But like
his friends have head trauma by like season 3, which makes sense why some people just don't know he's Superman. Is because they just constantly are getting knocked the fuck out. Which I appreciate shows back then just being like, oh, how are we gonna explain them not finding out they got knocked out? As opposed to like in the era now where they're like, oh, we need to find some convoluted way for why they can't figure out who he is. And then Smallville was just like, hit him on the head. Cool. All right, we'll do it. So my list is pretty light. As I've been talking about the last couple weeks, I've been trying to get through Enslaved Odyssey to the West. It's a 360 PS3 game because I'm going to do a spoiler cast for it for Digital Days Gaming with Chris from Active Quest. Finished that up, or I still have like one mission left, but that will probably release sometime next week when I get around to edit it. I've also decided to bring back the movie podcast that I occasionally will bring up on here, so that's taken my time as I've already recorded 2 episodes of that, and I have like 4 hours worth of fucking podcast to edit.
We'll put whenever Michael does edit it, it'll have a link in the show note, because anything that he does is always interesting.
So that's going on there. My Astro Aqua Kitty interview with Dugan Jackson is up on the feed if you haven't listened to that. So I've been playing that game here and there when I get a chance. Though I have the horrible problem where as soon as I bust out my Switch, I just play Tetris 99. Like, no matter what, and I just can't pick up that Switch without doing that. And for the most part, it's just been those 3 games. I didn't download MLB The Show just yet. As soon as we're done, I'm going to turn the Xbox that's sitting to the right of me. I don't think it's slightly off camera. And I'm going to download MLB The Show and hope that replaces NBA 2K as my brain dead game, my game where I just want to play and not think.
My son bought it, which I knew he would, and so we did the digital share thing that we've always been doing for the last couple of years since we both have PlayStations and we both have PS5s now. The thing that's interesting is that he was actually talking to me about it before he bought it. Is that there are some actual decent things that come. I think he got the $80, $85 version.
The Jackie Robinson one.
Yeah, because the create a park thing, the stubs and the virtual currency or whatever they use. My account is the primary account. He probably actually still has a parental controlled account now that I say it out loud. He's 21 years old, but I'm sure that he's never ran into an issue where he can't play something. But the thing that's weird is that like the pre-order bonuses come to me. So I was actually doing some reading, and he's actually playing it on my PSN account. And I'm hoping that I'm thinking like after maybe he redeems some of that stuff, that maybe he can take his save and put it on like a USB stick and then maybe put it on his account. I was hoping.
The stubs and stuff at least.
Yeah, but I'm thinking after he's already spent them.
You might have found a loophole, but I have a feeling Sony wants their money, and they know about that.
No, and I'm fine. Like I'm saying, like after he's already spent them on his character and upgraded his character or whatever, and he's like that maybe he can move it to, because the problem that we're running into now is that if he's on my account, I can't be on my account. Mm-hmm. So it's not a big deal. We're usually not home at the same time, and the best part about it is that if I want to play the show, I can just play it on Xbox.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to the thing that also that it was irritating, and I thought that maybe they would have fixed this with the PS5, but apparently not. So he bought it. We set it up to download. I got the little notification on my phone that said ready to play. He got the notification on his phone that was ready to play. Like sometime in the middle of the night, he came upstairs in the morning to play it. He launched it. It had an in-game install that was almost double the size of the PSN download. Yep.
No, that is still a thing. And
it took forever.
It takes forever to do that. I think there's still that instance of Xbox where they'll put that little dash that it's just like you can play up to this point, but it's just I just wait for the whole thing to download because I don't want to play
But no, you actually had to kick the game. You had to start the game.
Yeah. You had to start the game
to make it do the other download.
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
think
he was
Call
able
of
to play
Duty does
he was
that.
able to play like the World Series rematch or whatever. Like the game that I guess in a perfect world they felt that you played this game. You know, NBA 2K did this. Like, oh, play the finals rematch, and by the time you're done playing, the rest of the game will download. No, and I actually have
it again.
I have above average internet. I'm not saying I got amazing internet. So
but it's like a 40 gig game, so you should be able to to do
right.
that.
And it was just he was like annoyed actually. So because then he's like, well, I gotta go to work now, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but
Yeah. And so just to jump to the questions, Andy asks if we spent time with the show yet. So there's our answer. We haven't had to that, and just like the loss on like moving your character year to year is gone this year. Do you have any thoughts on that? I think that sucks, and I'm sure there's a technical reason why they couldn't do that, but it just sucks that they couldn't do that.
I guess I didn't realize, and I'm not 100% confirmed on this. I was watching a video, like an IGN video, where Ryan McCaffrey, who's actually probably the only baseball fan at IGN, but he was talking about apparently there is cross progression, which I didn't realize there was, and I'm not 100% sure, but I might be able to take my Xbox character and put him on my PlayStation at a certain point in time, or back and forth, which I think would be pretty cool. It does suck though that this feature that they had, like even like Josh mentioned it 2 weeks ago, of like, why can't EA do it? And now MLB's like, or at the Sony San Diego's like, well, I think they're drawing a line in the sand with this version, and maybe it's going to be from this year forward, or it's just going to be gone.
Yeah,
and I think that the multiple platform probably had something to do with it. Something had to give.
It'll probably be back next year, and then it'll be celebrated of like, hey, we're bringing this feature back. We couldn't do it because
I think they just avoided. I think they just avoided the question of, can I bring my guy from PS4 to Xbox One? I think they're just like, they just completely avoided it, and they just hit the reset button this year.
Yeah, because I was talking to Andy in another chat, and he was super bummed out because he couldn't figure out how to do it. And then I pulled up the MLB FAQ, and they were just like, nope, can't do that. But yeah, so that kind of sucks. But playing, that's pretty much it. Watching, nothing amazing. Still making fun out of Riverdale in my downtime. I've gotten really into just listening to podcasts and just, playing like sports games or whatever, so I'm not really watching anything major. I mean, I've watched a shit ton of movies that are all completely random, so I'm not going to go through the process of like mentioning those here, just because it'd be a while, and I've talked about those movies enough this past week. So that's it for me.
Yeah, if you want to know the random movies that Michael's watching, like I said, we'll link to it later. And you can listen to like
there'll be a podcast next week that has them. Yeah,
that super long thing that you may or may not want to listen to.
Yes.
So we answered Andy's question. Anybody else that sent questions, they can use hashtag AskDigitalDays. Post them in the Facebook group. Post them on the Discord. Post them on Twitter. Twitter, especially if you use the hashtag, we can just search the hashtag, so that works. Randy Pinnock, what's your favorite AAA Switch game?
Anything from Nintendo. Animal Crossing, Mario Kart is still that. AAA Switch games are always just going to be from Nintendo, because a lot of AAA third-party games do not come to Nintendo platforms for obvious reasons. So it's the boring answer, but I feel like it's the only answer that makes sense for the Switch. In terms of just like AAA games that are available, they're going to have the Nintendo logo on them.
Yeah, I mean, based on the little bit of time I've had with the Switch and the main reason I bought the Switch, the one that I would say right now is Paper Mario.
Yeah, the like current, and then Breath of the Wild before that for you, right?
Yeah, which I still didn't finish.
Yeah, but you spent a ton of time in that game, I feel.
Breath of the Wild or Paper Mario?
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I have played a lot of it, but I mean, I was struggling with some of it, and I think I'll do better now with like, I haven't gone back to play it since Ubisoft was gracious enough to send me a Pro controller for Immortals, but I'll definitely check that out with the Pro controller on the bigger TV, and I think I'll probably do better with that. So Stefan Wren, have you ever gone scuba diving, and if not, would you, Michael?
Yeah, I would if I lived anywhere interesting to scuba dive. I'm in Chicago, so like,
dude, I bet you there's some interesting stuff in the Chicago River.
I would not go under the Chicago River. I would want to live. The Chicago,
I know, I'm just kidding.
Chicago River is one of the nastiest rivers you'll ever see, and Lake Michigan is like, okay, I'm gonna see just some of what I would see in a Chicago River. Yeah, I would go scuba diving if I like was somewhere interesting.
Like if you and your girlfriend went to Disney and decided to stay at like close to the ocean, and there was some like check out a sunken pirate ship, like that's like.
Yeah, I would probably consider doing that if it was interesting enough.
Some people are just completely adverse to water, so like I didn't know if you were or weren't. So.
Oh, I'm fine. Sarah is afraid of water, so it would be me scuba diving. But yeah, no, I would have to be somewhere more exotic, I think, as opposed to just being like in the coastline of the United States.
I 100% would. I had some opportunities when I was younger and through scouts to go to like a scuba school in like there's like the Boy Scouts have a sea base in Florida, and it just didn't work out that summer for me to be able to go. The closest I guess that we've ever done, my wife and I have ever done, is when we've been in Cabo. I won a trip years ago with Foot Locker, like long time ago, like 15 years ago now, and we did some like coral snorkeling, but in terms of like, I am not afraid of water at all. I am not afraid of going deep. I dove when I was really young for diving, for swimming, and I competitively swam for almost 10 years of my childhood. So with the right opportunity, I would 100% do it. But like Michael said, I'm not going to just like, oh, like you're just going to like, I'm not going to just go underwater 40, 80 feet or whatever just to swim around. I would have to, I'd want to see something or be able to mess with something or to check something out. But we've done some really cool like coral snorkeling and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun. But I'm not afraid of like if a shark showed up, like that would mess with me. But like I feel like my abilities are good enough. Like if I got near like a jellyfish, like I could get away. Or if I got stung by a jellyfish, I know how to treat it. Not the way that most people think to treat it. But yeah, that would be something that would be really cool. So. All right, those are our questions. Like we said, we're probably going to be a little bit of a shorter show. Spotlights this week, obviously the Patreon episode. If you a part of the $7 tier, there's a Mighty Ducks one, and April's almost over, so we have to record something else. And then if you're on the feed listening to this on your podcast services, there is another. Before this episode, there is a developer interview for the Astro Aqua Kitty team. Michael did a great job with that interview, speaking to that developer and talking about it. It's kind of interesting. Like there's not a whole lot of talk in there, but there's definitely, this was before we knew that, this is after we knew the store was closing, but before we knew it was opening back up again.
Yeah.
So there's a little mini time capsule thing in there. So definitely check that out. And then please, if you have any recommendations for other people, guests, I know there's a couple guests that we're working on right now for the show, or possible interviewers that you would like us to do, developers, tag us, and then we would love to conversate back and forth. There's the emails in the show notes. You can give that email to somebody else and say, hey, like email them. Maybe they'll, Michael checks it, I check it. We'll definitely, I don't really think that for Michael and I that there's anything that I would say that's off limits that's from a gaming standpoint.
Yeah, we're pretty open to even everybody. Even if it's a game that me and Dave aren't going to be interested in, that would be why we'd want to talk to the person, and learn more about that aspect of gaming. So definitely recommend stuff to us, and we'll see what we can do.
So the social networks, you can follow the main account at Digital Days Pod. You can follow Michael at the first MJC 1ST. You can follow myself at Good Dave Hunt. Facebook group. Discord server is all linked in the show notes, and then our patreon.com/digitaldaysgaming. $1 tip jar essentially pays for a year of podcast hosting. A month, not a year, a month. Sorry. 1 year of payment pays for 1 month. There we go. $3 Discord access to a private Discord channel within the server. You don't need to pay to get into the server. It's just a different channel. $5 gets you 24-hour early access to the show, and $7 is the monthly bonus episode. Mighty Ducks, Halloween traditions, E3 stories, origin stories are all in there. So with that's all I have this week.
Yep, no, that's same for me. So we'll leave you with a shorter episode this week, so you can still catch up, because you're probably still getting through that Josh episode. Which was almost...
I'm still trying to catch up on my sleep schedule from that Josh episode.
Yeah, that messed you up, probably.
All right, I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See ya.